Black CEO kicked out of a VIP seat for a white passenger, she immediately freezes the airline's $700 million budget. It began as a routine business flight, another day in the sky for executives, lawyers, and politicians in the first-class cabin. But when a black woman in a tailored suit took her rightful place in the front row, a flight attendant approached with a forced smile and a lie dripping from her lips. The seat had been reassigned. A white passenger stood nearby, smug, already expecting her to move. The CEO hesitated, her fingers tightening around her boarding pass. She had paid. She had the right. Yet still, she was pushed aside, her dignity stripped in front of strangers. What no one knew was that her decision in that moment would ripple into boardrooms, headlines, and the very survival of the airline itself. Her life was one built from grit. Raised in a modest home, she had watched her parents juggle jobs to keep the lights on. She knew what it was to go without, what it was to be told no before she even asked. But she also knew the power of resilience. Education was her weapon. She worked harder than anyone, climbed through spaces that had never seen someone like her, and built an empire with her name etched into contracts, deals, and billion-dollar decisions. She became a CEO not by luck, but by sheer force of will. And yet, no matter how high she climbed, there were always eyes waiting to cut her down. That morning, she boarded quietly, dressed in elegance that spoke of success but carried herself with the humility her parents had instilled in her. She had meetings across the country, deals worth hundreds of millions hinging on her presence. For her, first class wasn't luxury, it was necessity. The chance to land rested, ready to lead. She took her seat, pulled out her laptop, and prepared for another day of shaping futures. Then came the attendant. The mistake, the demand that she move. Around her, whispers rose. Some passengers smirked, others avoided her eyes. The white man who replaced her sat down with ease, legs stretched and smile smug. The CEO stood in silence, her pulse steady. It was not the first time she had been forced to swallow indignity, and she knew it might not be the last. But this time, something was different. The rising action burned like fire. She watched as her luggage was moved without consent, as her comfort was erased, as her worth was dismissed in front of an audience who chose silence over solidarity. Rage burned, but so did clarity. She opened her laptop, connected to in-flight Wi-Fi, and began typing. Not an angry tweet, not a complaint email, but an executive order. For she was not just a passenger. She was the CEO of a multinational firm whose investments stretched into aviation, logistics, and beyond. By the time the plane landed, calls had been made. The airline's boardroom lit up with emergency meetings. Contracts worth $700 million, fueling their operations, expanding their fleet, were frozen. The name on those contracts was hers, and the message was clear: dignity is not optional. The climax came when the story went public. Passengers had filmed the incident, uploading clips of her being forced to move. The world watched, outraged, as headlines screamed, "Black CEO humiliated on flight." Interviews followed, her calm voice cutting through excuses. She didn't shout. She didn't beg. She stated facts. Bias had cost the airline its integrity, and now it would cost them their future. Executives scrambled, apologies flowed, but the damage was done. Stock prices wavered, investors questioned leadership, and the CEO stood unshaken, her face a symbol of what it means to stand firm in the face of systemic prejudice. The very seat they had tried to strip from her became the seat of her power. The resolution was not just about money. It was about change. The airline introduced sweeping reforms, from bias training to accountability measures, not because they wanted to, but because they had to. Other companies took note, realizing that disrespect could cost more than dignity. It could cost survival. And through it all, the CEO remained steady. She didn't seek vengeance. She sought respect, not only for herself, but for every person who had ever been told they didn't belong. Her story became legend in boardrooms and beyond. A reminder that racism is not only moral failure, it is bad business. And that power, when wielded with integrity, can turn humiliation into history. If a black CEO can be stripped of her seat in plain sight, What does that say about the countless others who suffer in silence without the power to fight back? And if one act of courage can bring a $700 million company to its knees, what might happen if we all refuse to accept indignity? The next time you see someone's worth diminished before your eyes, will you stay silent, or will you help freeze the system that feeds it?